Mike Davis will be reading the 7 statements of Jesus made from the cross. And after each statement, I'm going to have a brief message concerning that statement. Here is the first word from the cross.
The first word, Luke 23:33 through 34. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they cast lots to divide his garments.
Have you ever given it much thought about how difficult it must have been for God the Father as Jesus was hanged on the cross? As he watched as the people that he had created mercilessly spat on and beat his son and nailed his hands and his feet to a tree. Have you ever thought how difficult that was for the Father to watch and to basically do nothing to the people who were doing this? It had to have been extremely difficult. And so I wonder, those words of Jesus, those first words of Jesus from the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Was that a son's loving words to his father, whom he knew was suffering? And he needed to reassure him that the plan that they had was the right one. The plan that they had to save humankind from our sin was the right one. And that he didn't and shouldn't change his mind now as he watched his son be brutalized, but to rather forgive us so that they could go through together the plan that they had made for our redemption. Now hear the second words from the cross.
The second word, Luke 23:38 through 43. There was also an inscription over him, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying, Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, Do you not fear God, since you were under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. And he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said to him, Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise.
Have you ever been in a really terrible situation, one that you were truly suffering, and all of a sudden somebody showed up who was going through the same thing, and they were able to say something to you that just made you realize that you weren't alone, that there was some real humanity out there, and that someone besides God cared. I sometimes think when I read this passage that Mike just read to us, that that's exactly what was going on with Jesus. This thief was a gift for our Lord. Somebody who could be there with him in the midst of the suffering and give him a little glimpse of humanity the way that it was meant to be. Somebody to go through it with. And how happy Jesus must have been to say to that man who stood up for Jesus that he was going to be with him in paradise. Now for the third words from the cross.
The third word, John 19:25 through 27. But standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her to his own home.
Honor your father and your mother. That's a commandment not just meant for us, it was meant for all humankind. And Jesus followed it. Even at his death, he was going to honor his mother. And so he told her, "Behold your son." And to John, he said, "Behold your mother." But his love for his mother went much further back than that. Of course, we know that Jesus, being sinless, loved his mother completely from the word go. But we even see it the day that he gets left behind in Jerusalem, back when he was 12 years old, and his parents finally found him 3 days later, where he was with the scribes and the Pharisees talking in the temple and amazing them with his insights. But his parents, when they found him, said, "How in the world could you have done this to us?" And at that time, his comment seemed so cool. He simply said, "Didn't you know that I was going to be about my Father's business?" You wonder what that was really all about. And what about, the promises that we have from the scriptures that tell us that he works all things together for our good? Was that true for Mary and Joseph? Indeed it was. Because Jesus was going to disappear for 3 more days, 20 years later. And that woman, Mary, was going to need something to hold on to after she watched her son die on a cross. She had the words of Jesus in her head those 3 days between his death and resurrection. And they probably rang like a bell in her ears. Didn't you know I was to be about my Father's business? What comforting words for a mother who just watched her son die, to know that his promise of resurrection in 3 days was already foreshadowed years before.